experiences. So do you think a lot of that ties in with, or have you trained people? Because I train people too, but it all seems to tie together in my mind's eye. But I'd like to know what you think about seeing, not just dead people or their ghosts. You don't like to work with them, but have you seen them in other around you or working? I don't think I've ever asked anybody else, to be honest.
Well,
Johanna.
Actually, the last before I moved back to LA, I took care of some friends in their last transition, and I moved briefly to another town, and I lived in this apartment, and that was what was going on the whole time. Like there was construction going on that building in another dimension.
Oh, really?
Oh,
my
crazy.
gosh. Are you serious? Who would ever
No,
think?
I'm serious.
What?
And I didn't really tell anybody about that, and people would come in through the windows and go out and talk about the walls and stuff. It was really bizarre.
Oh my God, we got a similar story, and folks, you can't make this stuff up. Are you serious? I mean, I've never talked to anybody else that just wonder if other people could see, because I didn't know how to describe it. I'd put my hand out, but it didn't. It was like watching, folks, it was like watching a sort of a dark TV screen that's there, but it's not there. It's like, how's that work? So I never did figure it out, but I was in my kids were little, so I was probably 25, 26, that was amazing.
Yeah,
so what'd you do with that part?
Well, it was just a few years ago, and I didn't really tell anybody about that, but some people came to visit me, and they spent the night, and the guy, in the morning, he was all grumpy, and I said, well, did you not sleep well in my new place? And he said, no, I was up all night. There was construction going on in this house all over the place. And
oh, my gosh.
And
that
I
is
said,
so
oh, wow.
weird.
And he was like, young as a friend of my kids. And I asked him, I said, you saw the construction? I just thought only I could see the construction. Because he was he did not describe himself as being anything even interested in this. But
wow.
He said yes, he said I could see everything, but it didn't seem to be this particular house. So I think the construction, that's how I felt too, was on a different house that must have been there before.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So
that is interesting, but right here on the radio show, folks. But I guess it's okay that there's a high strangeness, we call it, or the phenomenology of topics that we don't really plan, but sometimes you get with the right people and just touch certain thoughts that come in, like that walking down the hallway. And I've been in a hospital and felt somebody walk through me. And what's so funny is when you said, I was already telling Janet the answer in my brain when you said it makes you feel nauseous, because that's exactly what happens. I got sort of, it's like you're going to get sick right before you throw up or something. It's this feeling, and it sort of disrupts your internal organs or your nervous system or all of the above. But it's when you know something's not right, and it makes you sort of nauseous. But that's exactly the word. I was in my brain, I was telling Janet when she asked you that question, how it make you feel? I said, it makes you feel nauseous. And you said it. I went, oh, my God, we're on the same wavelength. It's true.
Yeah, and I did, I had some, personal messages that people had me deliver after they passed away. But I don't really like to do that because I don't know how they receive it, and I feel kind of strange. And that
was
so
in the movie Ghost.
Stay away from ghosts.
Yeah, that was in the movie Ghost with Whoopi Goldberg. But I think whoever wrote that script, Janet could look it up probably, but that movie Ghost with I knew Patrick Swayze personally. Yeah, I knew him personally. I never met Whoopi Goldberg, but I did meet Patrick Swayze. So when he got that part, I was amazed because he was a dancer, if you know who Patrick Swayze was. But that's one of the all-time famous movies.
I love the movie. Oh, I cried like a baby.
Aw.
I
Really?
used to like references when I was teaching the clairvoyant. I said, you just got to see this movie to just sort of open yourself up to some possibilities.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And that it gives their mind sort of a model to think, well, that the possibilities. And my brother bless his heart, he's on the other side now, Nathaniel Burton Thurman Jr., but his favorite movie was Ghost. And I never got to sit down and have a conversation like the three of us are doing now, on or off radio, live on air. I wished I had, though, folks, So one thing I can say about, us doing shows is it's very opening to the heart and mind, soul and body and stuff like that, and other people will hear us and not feel so bad if they've experienced, because I feel better now knowing that other people can see other realms and talk about it live.
Well, yeah, I kind of prefer sort of higher, more inspirational realms than construction sites, I have to tell you.
Yeah, exactly. There must have been a reason.
That is interesting. Did you investigate that any further? Did you see what the place was like that was there before?
No, I just tried to establish some boundaries.
Yeah.
I just wanted my nights to sleep and be by myself and not lay in the middle of a construction site.
So how did that happen? Did it work?
Yeah.
And so what do you do to establish boundaries? How do you do that?
Well,
if we're having bleed through from ghosts and other dimensions, how do you establish boundaries?
Tell them that I'm off limits. Just like that. They're like, okay, I'm off limits.
Yeah, I had a problem when my neighbor, he ended up crossing a river, and he wrecked his car, flipped over, and he had two women in the car with him, and they both died. And so he kept coming to my house, he would sit on the foot of the bed. I'd get up to the bathroom. I always get up to the bathroom. And there's this person sitting on my husband's feet. Two things are going on. Why isn't my husband going, get off my feet? And then who was it? And at first I would run away from it, and then I got brave one day, and I walked over, and it was my neighbor, Jim. I said, Jim, is that you? And then we were talking telepathically, and he was explaining that he was in great pain because he felt guilty because these two women had died, and then he also felt guilty because he left behind his wife and two young adolescent boys. And so he was just in a mess. It was like Beetlejuice, like his nose was falling off. And he came for like 2.5 years, and I would get exhausted, and I'd say, honey, how can I can't be doing this because I have a full life that I'm living in, and not getting any sleep. So he helped me set some boundaries, but occasionally he would still come. I wasn't able to 100%, set a boundary, but it was much. I guess he respected me and said I'm not going to bother her too much. But he finally left. I could feel he left the house. His son was so depressed about his dad that he was drinking and driving on his motorcycle, and he went right over some tourists in Kihei, and now he right over the front of their car, and then it's like he went and got his dad, and they both went over to the other side. So, in a way, I was very glad to be a part of that and helped him make it through to the other side. Somehow, what I was doing helped, but I'm not 100% sure how it works. What about you two, Jay? You said your daughter might be. Tell us more about your daughter. Is she visiting you?
She passed, but I don't know if it was a part of her lingering or there's two mental pictures when I looked out my door because her room was right across from mine. So she went to the bathroom a lot, right? It's just to the left. It's a little small duplex apartment I live in, and I would just see a dark shadow, and I was so used to seeing her go to the bathroom, so I thought, well, there was some lingering thoughts in my head. And then sometimes I would see a dark shadow come up. But when my dog barks too and sees the dark shadow, that was sort of interesting, but I didn't have the same feeling about my daughter. So it was a good feeling, but I don't know. You don't know, folks. There's knowing and believing. And then a lot of us have to make an assumption based on the best, research or the best thoughts and logic we can. And I just always felt like, well, there's a part of her that still lingers here. And I've talked with Janet before about seeing people die and how different people split up different personalities or some. But I don't know. We're into a pretty deep well right now, Janet, and it's hard for me to talk about my daughter. It's still a little raw, but I do believe in ghosts, and I do believe in spirits. And Johanna, when we work as empaths, intuitives, these are things people want to know about for themselves. So they'll tune in. Mm-hmm. And Johanna, we had discussed doing a month ago Wise Women, or 2 months ago. And, Janet's going to put this on a special domain, our website or blog. She calls Wise Wild Women. So, Janet, back to you. What do you think that this is a wild part of us if we're talking about ghosts? What?
Well,
we're
wild because we're talking about things that most people don't talk about. I mean, I guess there's a lot of people talking about ghosts and these things these days, but back when we were all children, it wasn't commonplace. Also, I couldn't get a domain that was, just Wise Women because those have all been taken. So I was building a website around this, which I haven't gotten to yet, but that's the plan.
Okay, well,
let's ask a question. Because you mentioned that you were, I want to just go back to something you said.
Okay.
So you mentioned that you saw people, I'm talking to you, Theresa. You mentioned that you saw people leave their bodies when they died. Do you want to share that story? Because I know you've shared it on the radio before. And I only saw my cat leave. I've seen people die. Yeah, let's talk about the next round. Will be who did you see die, and what did you see when you saw people die, and who died? Okay, do you want to go first, or do you want to go Johanna first?
It doesn't matter. Johanna, you got anything you want to talk about? Because I was with my husband when he died 5 years ago this month. And it's still like yesterday for me. But do you have anything, Johanna, or you want me to go first?
Why don't you just started on that. Tell us about your husband.
Okay,
transitioning.
He'd been dying for years. He worked for the President of the United States, and he did hip pocket orders in and out of country. So he had some men that he killed or were killed or wet works, they have signed people to, kill like just important people that aren't cooperating with the world the way the intelligence community thinks it should be handled, right? So he had those kind of assignments, but so he carried around a lot of dark energy with him. And so we're talking about when he finally passes, but he would see the people that he had killed or was with him that got killed. Mainly his best friend, Jack Casavacas. Has a funny name, but right at the end, Jack would come and sit with him before he died, so that's a ghost. And then, so when Jenna's talking about is seeing somebody pass at the last, it was really hard on me. I literally died the same day he did, but they revived me, and our God revived me, I guess you could say. I was already last rites, chaplain, all that. I was at the end of his bed when I passed, but they came. I fainted, but I was able to pull myself back together, but I guess my heart wouldn't stay. So I was going to get him something to drink. They had just put a hole in his lung and took a piece out of his lung to check the cancer in his lung, but he had known he'd had it a year or two, but he said if he went in, he would die, which he did. He predicted he would die that day, and he did. But there's some kind of energy he and I had between us through our navel, and we both drove trucks, and they would stretch. If we were in separate trucks, I could feel him about 2,500 miles, but there was a real energy plasma energy between us. So when he was he was in a lot of pain, but he wanted something to drink. I went out to the hall to get it, and then I collapsed the second time. This time, because I was in a public hospital hallway, and